Welcome to English Storytelling Podcast, where we explore stories of love, self-discovery, and the choices that define us. I'm Melody, and today, I bring you a heartfelt tale about love, loss, and finding the courage to walk away from what no longer serves us. This is the story of what love should be. Let me introduce you to my characters. Susan, a 25-year-old woman with straight blonde hair that falls to her shoulders and deep brown eyes. She once believed in love with all her heart, waiting, hoping, and sacrificing, until she realized she deserved more. Chris, 27 years old, with short brown hair and brown eyes. Charming, spontaneous, but emotionally distant. He is a man afraid of commitment, keeping love at arm's length. Daniel, 28 years old, with dark wavy blonde hair and warm brown eyes. He is patient, kind, and steady. The kind of man who loves deeply and sincerely, without hesitation. Susan once thought love was about holding on, about waiting for someone to change. But when she finds herself constantly overlooked and unheard, she must ask the hardest question: is love supposed to hurt? Join me as we unravel this moving story of heartbreak, healing, and discovering what love should truly be. Part 1. When love is everything. Susan once believed that Chris was the only one she needed. They first met at a mutual friend's birthday party. From the moment they locked eyes, Susan was drawn to his charm. The tousled brown hair, the smart smile, and the way he spoke as if nothing in the world mattered. They began dating. Everything was brilliant in the beginning. Conversations that lasted into the night, spontaneous hugs in the streets, and impromptu trips. Chris had a way of making her feel special, as if she was the most wonderful thing that had ever happened to him. And Susan loved him with all her heart. She loved the freedom with which he lived. She loved the way he laughed, the way he would ruffle her hair when she was sad. She loved him so much that she overlooked the times he would disappear without explanation, the times he cancelled plans at the last minute. She loved him so much that she accepted the loneliness he brought with him. Part 2. The first cracks appear. Gradually, Susan realized that Chris didn't love her the way she loved him. She was always the one waiting for him to reply to her texts after hours of silence, waiting for him to decide when he wanted to meet, waiting for him to prioritize her over work, friends, or personal hobbies.
It seems like I'm the only one trying to make this work,
she said during one of their arguments. Chris sighed, leaning back on the sofa.
Susan, you're overreacting. We're fine.
Fine. You call ignoring my messages all day, canceling plans without notice, and avoiding serious conversations fine.
Susan smiled bitterly. Chris shrugged.
I don't like all this pressure. I love you, but I don't want a relationship that's too bound by responsibilities.
Her heart tightened.
Responsibilities,
he said, looking away.
I just want things to be easy. Not everything needs to be planned. Not everything needs to be about taking care of each other's feelings.
Susan went silent. She had once thought he was the man she wanted to spend her life with. But him. He just wanted her there when he needed her, nothing more. The cracks in their love grew deeper. Part 3. The final break, Everything collapsed on a rainy evening. Susan had spent hours preparing a romantic dinner. That day was their 3-year anniversary, a day that meant so much to her. But Chris didn't show up. She called him, but no response. Around midnight, he finally sent a brief message.
Sorry, I forgot. I'm busy today.
Busy. She threw her phone on the table, tears welling up. This wasn't the first time. But this time, she didn't feel the pain like before. Just emptiness. The next day, when Chris showed up with a smile, as if nothing had happened, Susan stood up, packed his things into a suitcase, and placed it in front of the door. Chris furrowed his brow.
What are you doing?
Susan took a deep breath, her voice calm yet terrifying.
You don't need me, Chris. You just need someone to come back to when you feel lonely. But I'm no longer your backup.
He stared at her for a long time.
Do you really want to end this?
No, Chris, you ended this a long time ago. You just didn't realize it.
Susan smiled sadly. She shut the door, leaving him outside. For the first time in 3 years, she truly let go. Part 4. Love is no longer a pain. That autumn, Susan decided to spend more time with herself. After the hurt with Chris, she realized she needed to learn to love herself before seeking love from someone else. She began rekindling old habits she had once loved but forgotten. Like walking under the golden leaves of autumn, spending hours in the library reading books, and savoring hot cups of tea in peace. The city library had long been Susan's favorite place. She loved the feeling of flipping through old pages, the smell of paper that carried stories from generations past. On quiet late afternoons, after work, she would stop by the library, pick a book, and find a quiet corner to read. One Saturday afternoon, while standing in front of the classic literature shelf, Susan accidentally dropped a book. She bent down to pick it up, just as another hand reached for it.
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
A warm voice said. Susan looked up and met the gentle brown eyes of Daniel, a calm-looking man with dark wavy blonde hair. He smiled kindly and handed her the book.
Do you like reading Dickens?
Daniel asked, noticing Susan was holding great expectations. She smiled.
Yes, I love stories with depth. How about you?
I do too. I've read this one before. It's not just about hope, but also about growth, how we view love, and what really matters in life.
Susan was surprised. Not many people could talk about books with such understanding. She felt a light yet genuine connection. They stood there, chatting about their favorite books, authors who had influenced them, and the peaceful afternoons spent reading. Before leaving the library, Daniel looked at her and said,
If you like reading books at the library, I'm sure you'll enjoy a little cafe nearby. They have a free bookshelf for customers to borrow books to read on site. Would you like to join me this weekend?
Susan hesitated for a moment. Not because she didn't like the idea, but because this was the first time in a long time she actually wanted to get to know someone without feeling scared or hurt. And she decided not to let her past hold her back.
I'd love.
Part 5. When the past returns, months passed, and Susan felt like she had truly found herself again. She no longer woke up with that empty feeling. No longer waiting for empty messages from someone who didn't truly care for her. And Daniel. He was like a gentle breeze through her life, Not rushing, not demanding, but always there with sincerity. Unlike Chris, Daniel didn't make her feel like she had to prove her worth. He listened to her when she talked about her dreams, her worries, and her old pains. He didn't make grand promises, but he always followed through on the little things. The way he remembered she liked her coffee black, or how he would walk through the rain just to make sure she got home safely. One day, while sitting in their usual cafe, Susan's phone buzzed.
Susan, I miss you. Can you give me another chance?
She stared at the message, the familiar feelings rushing back. There was a time when she would responded immediately, hoping that this time, he'd truly see her value. But now, she only felt relief. She put her phone down without replying. Right then, another message came in.
Want to go for coffee tomorrow?
Susan smiled. She knew that love wasn't about waiting for someone to change. It wasn't about trying to hold on to someone who never prioritized her. True love was about peace, when you could just be yourself. And this time, she wouldn't let it slip away. Here are some vocabulary words and phrases from the story, along with their definitions and example sentences. Vocabulary words 1. Tousled, add g. Untidy or messy, usually referring to hair. Example. Susan was drawn to Chris's tousled brown hair, which gave him a carefree charm. 2. Spontaneous, ashad j. Happening naturally or suddenly, without planning. Example. Their relationship was filled with spontaneous hugs in the streets and last-minute trips. 3. Overlooked, zv. Failed to notice or ignore something intentionally. Example. Susan overlooked the times Chris disappeared without explanation, because she loved him. 4. Prioritize CV, to treat something as more important than other things. Example, she kept waiting for Chris to prioritize her, but he never did. 5. Bitterness, anden. A feeling of anger and sadness caused by unfair treatment. Example, Susan smiled with bitterness, realizing she was the only one making an effort. 6. Bound by defer. V. Restricted or limited by something. Example, Chris didn't want a relationship bound by responsibilities. 7. Collapse, a V. To fall apart or break down completely. Example, everything collapsed on a rainy evening when Chris forgot their anniversary. 8. Welling up, CEFR. Via filling with emotion, usually tears. Example, tears started welling up in Susan's eyes as she realized the truth. 9. Emptiness, undone. A feeling of loneliness or lack of purpose. Example, she didn't feel pain anymore, just emptiness. 10. Rekindle, en vue. To bring back something that was lost, such as a feeling or habit. Example, Susan decided to rekindle her love for reading and peaceful walks. 11. Savor view, to enjoy something slowly and fully. Example, she sat by the window, savoring a hot cup of tea. 12. Generations past, NN. People who lived a long time ago. Example, the smell of old books reminded her of generations past. 13. Accidentally is a advish, by mistake, without intention. Example, Susan accidentally dropped a book, and Daniel reached for it at the same time. 14. Genuine ad DJ, real, sincere, and honest. Example: Susan felt a genuine connection with Daniel when they talked about books. 15. Hesitate, to pause or be uncertain before making a decision. Example: she hesitated for a moment before saying yes to Daniel's invitation. 16. Rushing, moving too fast or acting quickly without thinking. Example: unlike Chris, Daniel never made her feel like she was rushing into something. 17. Demanding, agid, requiring a lot of attention or effort. Example: Daniel wasn't demanding. He just wanted to be there for her. 18. Grand promises, big or extravagant promises that may not be fulfilled. Example: unlike Chris, Daniel never made grand promises, but he always kept his word. 19. Relief, a feeling of relaxation after worry or stress is gone. Example: when she saw Chris's message, she didn't feel pain anymore, just relief. 20. Slip away, to lose something gradually, often without noticing. Example: this time, Susan wouldn't let true love slip away. Phrases and expressions. 1. Locked eyes, when two people look at each other at the same time and hold the gaze. Example: from the moment they locked eyes, Susan was drawn to Chris. 2. Making an effort, trying hard to do something, especially in a relationship. Example: she was the only one making an effort to keep the relationship going. 3. Take a deep breath, to pause and gather courage before doing something difficult. Example: Susan took a deep breath before telling Chris it was over. 4. Left outside, to be abandoned or ignored. Example: she shut the door, leaving him outside both physically and emotionally. 5. A gentle breeze, used metaphorically to describe someone who brings peace and warmth. Example: Daniel was like a gentle breeze in her life, kind, calm, and patient. 6. Follow through, to complete something that has been promised. Example: Daniel didn't just say he cared. He always followed through with his actions. 7. Familiar feelings rushing back, when emotions from the past suddenly return. Example: seeing Chris's message, she felt familiar feelings rushing back, but they didn't control her anymore. 8. Waiting for someone to change, hoping a person will become better instead of accepting reality. Example: love isn't about waiting for someone to change, it's about being valued. 9. Taking care of each other's feelings, being mindful and considerate in a relationship. Example: Chris didn't believe in taking care of each other's feelings, but Daniel did. 10. Peace, when you can just be yourself, a phrase that describes true love as being comfortable and accepted. Example: she knew that real love was about peace, when you can just be yourself.